As the college football season rapidly approaches, yes, there are many stories swirling around college athletics that are in the national conversation right now. We have NIL, the transfer portal, the Leah Thomas situation, and more. But there's one very fascinating subject that may actually happen sooner than what you think. That subject is about divisions and conferences, and should we have them? The College Football Oversight Committee recently recommended that conferences no longer be required to have divisions in order to have a championship game. We've seen this go down in the Big 12. They're already able to do it due to their round-robin scheduling and partly because of the amount of teams they have in the conference, even though that's in flux right now. That will be voted on and passed in short order. It was also just announced that the ACC is thinking about scrapping divisions and going to a 3-5-5 format where you have 3 permanent rivals and play the other schools on a yearly rotating basis, allowing each player to play each team in the conference, home and away, over a 4-year career. I believe they're going to go through with this. Then you look at the SEC, who will be going to 16 teams once Oklahoma and Texas touch down in the conference. Should they give up divisions similar to the Big 12 and soon to be ACC? Hell yes, they should. By adding another conference game, which would put the total to 9 SEC games per year, as opposed to the 8 we've been used to, while keeping your 3 permanent rivals, is the smartest move. Currently, we have teams that don't play each other for the better part of a decade or worse. That's ridiculous. By adding the 9th game and doing away with divisions, the SEC could keep their rivalries, give the fans, players, and coaches some matchups that we haven't seen in a while, and will lead to the beginning of new rivalries. It's like a circle. The goal of scheduling is to be as even as possible while keeping the high-profile games and rivalries intact. Divisions have really never made sense to me. Missouri's in the East. Bama and Auburn is in the West. You don't have to be Christopher Columbus to know directionally that makes no sense. This is a move that needs to be made and should be made once Texas and Oklahoma join the league. Besides, the best way to end division is by ending the divisions. But I will never cause division with blue blocks. We'll get into that. Guys, Georgia's played A&M one time since A&M has joined the conference.
Wow.
That's ridiculous. I know in a lot of things, whether it be business, sports, whatever, sometimes the easiest decision, the decision that makes the most sense, they typically never do. We've heard pods for the SEC, and I want your thoughts on the Big Ten, different amount of teams, which is kind of funny with the Big Ten. But if you're the SEC, and you could have your high-profile rivalries, but you could have every team play every team home and away over a 4-year career. Is that not the whole point of scheduling?
Yeah, you've been saying this for a while with the SEC, right?
Yeah.
So it's interesting to hear this come out from the ACC. So this model is 3-5-5.
Yes.
So you keep 3 games.
3 permanent games that you always play.
Right. So then your hardcore rivalries are going to stay intact. Mm-hmm. Then you'd get 5 teams that season. You'd play a different 5 the next season.
Yep.
Every other year like that.
Yep.
So to me, and let's just stay with the ACC right here because that's what, 13, that's 13 teams plus yourself will be 14, which is what the SEC has right now.
Right now, but they're going
Texas
to 16.
and Oklahoma coming in.
Yep.
So to me, divisions served their purpose, I think, for a long time, right? But the number keeps expanding, and all people want to see mostly are 2 things, as far as I'm concerned, in college football. One, that the hardcore rivalries don't go away.
That's the biggest thing to me. That's the biggest thing.
And 2, I think we like conference championships, right?
Yes.
We like conference. We want to see the 2 best teams play in the conference championship. And this would keep one division within a conference from being too overloaded, which is what we see in the SEC West right now and in the Big Ten East, right?
Yeah. Well, my biggest thing, the conference championship games, they're never going to do away with those. Too big of a moneymaker. It's too good of a game. But the way you get there has always been really interesting to me. Again, like you just said, if you're playing your 3 permanent rivals, okay, you get through those. We get those big games. They make their money. They get their marketing off that. We all get it. But going to play other teams in other places, I think will make it even more competitive when you come down to picking those 2 teams. Now it's not just, okay, you got to win the West and you got to win the East. We've had years where the 2 best teams were out of the what? Same division. Mm-hmm. We've had it a lot. You see it a lot. Look at the Big Ten last year. Ohio State and Michigan. I think it'll make it even more competitive. I think we'll get new matchups that we haven't seen in a while. Georgia, Texas A&M, sign me up for that, especially with the trajectory of where we're going. There's other great examples. There's a team I believe Ole Miss hadn't played since like the Civil War. It's ridiculous. It's been so long. But this fixes it to me. Now, that means they won't do it. That means they'll go to pods and then find a way to do other things.
Close.
But it makes the most sense. Greg Sankey said regardless, the SEC is going to be fine, which I agree with him. But again,
Greg.
look at the divisions. Why is Auburn and Alabama in the West? Why is Missouri in the East? Like, it doesn't make sense. It really doesn't. But again, it's all to getting to the best game for the championship. Whatever gives us the best chance to get to the best game, the two best teams out of that conference at the end of the year. I think it'll make games later in the conference even more competitive as well, because no longer is it, okay, well, we played this team from the West late, we have to win the West, or we're not going. You can have a lot of different dominoes fall a lot of different ways late in the season. I think it'll be somewhat new and refreshing as well. Divisions are just like the Model T Ford. Eventually, you invent better stuff.
It was a great staple.
Yeah, like guess what? Atari was great. Sega Genesis was great. You played a PlayStation 5 yet? VR? I mean, come on.
I think it needs to happen. It definitely needs to happen. What's the downside of this?
I don't see one.
What would really be the downside?
Keep the big games. I don't see one.
As long as you don't have a situation where three teams could have been the best in the conference, right, that didn't play each other that year, which I don't think in this scenario would happen, because whoever plays in the conference championship would have had to play one of those other teams. That's your biggest fear, right? It's the same reason why a 4-team playoff exists right now instead of the BCS.
That's why you add
that third team who was good.
That's why you add that 9th conference game. Again, you can't add teams to a conference and not add games to the conference.
With that.
Those two things go hand in hand, especially if you're trying to be as even-handed as possible. Somebody in the Booster Club, whether it's on YouTube or Daily Wire, actually, Blaine, on the YouTube one, did you put a poll out yet?
I did.
Okay, we already put. I want to find out if they think we should have divisions or not, and who wants pods. And so the only pods I use are Tide pods.
Well, I think
that's what I'm watching.
You're adding more teams to conferences, which we're seeing anyways. I kind of like this format because I want to see everybody play everybody. All right, I hate looking over the East and watch Georgia just walk through everybody like it's nothing. Oh, Florida, congrats, you're decent. Maybe in a couple of years, Billy. But I just want to see everybody. I want to see Georgia play A&M. Yeah, that's what I want to see. I want to see the big dogs from each side go at it.
So what if you have a situation, I'm just thinking through this, I haven't done the math based off how many teams are in each conference, but let's say Texas A&M doesn't play Alabama or Georgia that season, and they're able to get into the conference championship game because of that. But we have another scenario where the eye test tells you that Georgia and Alabama are the two best teams in the SEC, but they've played each other, and one of them has a loss there, and one of them has, one more loss elsewhere. In that scenario, what happens?
Well, you're going to have a litany of tiebreakers that go down in this thing, because again, you add tiebreakers for who wins the division if there's some sort of tie or something like that there. It typically works itself out. What I'm interested to see is, what really interests me is, if it stays at a 4-team playoff and you go to a 9-game conference schedule and everybody plays everybody, the SEC could legitimately get 3 teams.
I knew you were going there.
I'm telling you right now, like, there's a path to get 3 of the 4 teams from the SEC in the playoff doing this model. Is that why I want to do it? No. I don't think there should be, if you have more than 10 teams in a conference, I don't think there should be divisions. I don't think there should be divisions. I feel like we almost did it backwards.
Oh, that's a good point. So let me ask you this. How do the 3 permanent games get decided then?
See, here's where, this is the trickiest part to me, because you are going to have some overlap somewhere, because there's multiple rivalries, and you got to think that Texas and Oklahoma are going to be in. So if you're A&M, you got to play Texas. Then you got Oklahoma, Arkansas, and LSU. You can only do 3 of the 4. You look at Auburn, your rivalries, Alabama, Georgia. Find one more. Vandy. I don't know. Trying to help.
Wow, look at that.
Huge rivalry. Auburn, huge rivalry.
Vandy
got to play them every year.
That is beneath.
Got to play them every year.
That's beneath you boys.
You got to play
I would say for
Michigan. It needs to be every year thing. It'll be LSU. Ha 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 ha.
Like Auburn, Georgia, LSU, and Bama.
Every year. Good luck, guys.
That's what they'll do. They'll do it 100%.
Tennessee would get Vandy, though, right? Tennessee would get Vandy, Alabama, and Florida. Yeah.
If you're Georgia, you'd have Florida because of cocktail party.
Auburn. And who?
Who's your third?
South Carolina, maybe?
Something like that, maybe? Somewhere around there?
I think they should play. I think it should be Bama.
Oh, you just
because?
Just because?
What's the Booster Club?
Because they deserve it.
What, should we have divisions?
They both deserve it.
Yeah, so we got here. Let's go to the YouTube channel real quick. Colin Houston said, looks like Notre Dame got it right not being in a conference then.
Okay. Again, if it changes where there's well, I don't agree with that, even with the divisions, because Notre Dame's not in a conference. Like, you're still in a conference. You don't have divisions in the conference. You're in the house. You're just all living in the living room. You're not living in separate rooms. Notre Dame still is going to have to join the conference because it's going to go to super conferences. I'm just telling you, then Notre Dame's going to have to do it. But we're not saying there shouldn't be conferences. We're saying there shouldn't be divisions inside the conference. But I will give Notre Dame credit. That schedule this year, woo!
Yeah, this year, and that's the thing. That's the point with Notre Dame. We talk a lot about how Notre Dame should join a conference, and they think they're better than everybody by not being in a conference. But I get it. Look, it's a historic, a storied college football program. My thing is, you're just at the mercy of how good those teams are this year. This is what I've always said about Notre Dame. I love it that they play Southern Cal every year and Stanford every year and used to play Michigan every year before they cut off that part of the rivalry. But you're at the mercy of if Southern Cal is down that year, which they have been, and Stanford isn't great that year, which they haven't been, then if you have even one loss, you might not make the playoff. Even though generally they set those schedules and those rivalries because those teams used to be good every year, so it made them look good.
No, I agree with that 100%. Again, I want to make sure we're saying there still needs to be conferences. There just doesn't need to be divisions in conferences. Hey, if you like that content, go ahead and subscribe. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, String in a Cup. As long as you're listening, we appreciate you. Go subscribe now. It's Cranick Company.